That's the signal.
Just the two of us here?
Good evening and welcome to a special public session of the Landmarks Committee, Community Board 2, Manhattan. I'm Chenault Spence, Chair of the committee. Susan Gammy, Vice Chair, is in the conference room together with Mark Diller, the District Manager. Mark will see to the Zoom activities. Other members of the committee are in the room and attending by Zoom. The purpose of this evening is for the purpose of providing and updating the public on the activities of surrounding the demolition of the Dapolito Center. And we have called together some people to give testimony, and we will hear from the public. We wish to establish the record of the facts that are available and the view of the public concerning demolition of the center. Understand that the singular topic of this meeting is the demolition of the building, and that other concerns, and there are many, will be addressed by other committees and by the board in due course. There will come a time that subsequent Landmarks Committee meetings will be required as well. A community board is the primary arm of the city government for the direct contact between the community and the views of the community known to the city agencies and the office of the mayor. This ensures that the members of the community have a hearing in the city government, and the meeting tonight is of the committee and the board is fulfilling this mandate. At its regular monthly meeting on September 20th, the board approved a resolution from the Landmarks Committee opposing the demolition of the center. This resolution was based on the considerable testimony at the July board meeting from the public on this matter, and the public was resolute in its opposition to demolition. The committee was also crying out another mandate, that the historic preservation, and by acting quickly and deliberately and ensuring that the board was immediately on the record with this view. It is clear a dynamic situation is here. As further information is received, including the comments from the members of the public at this meeting and the superseding resolution may be proposed by the Landmarks Committee at a later meeting of the board. Please again understand the specific topic of this meeting, and its only concern is the demolition of the building and by extension, including the Keith Haring mural and the outdoor swimming pool, all this together comprising the campus. The meeting is not concerned with the use of the building, including whether its present use will be retained or will be developed for another use. That is a matter that will be considered by the Parks Committee and the Land Use Committee in due course. There will be 1 hour for public comment with questions. We will hear from as many as we can fit into this time, with preference given to people from the neighborhood. Susan Gammy will give the details at the question time. Written comments are of equal value, and spoken testimony here will be received for 1 week after this evening. Mark will elevate those to speak ahead of the question time. When you see that you have been elevated, please be sure to turn off your camera and microphone until your turn is called to speak. Invitations to the Landmark Commission and the Parks Commission to speak and respond to questions at this meeting were sent on September 10th, with a subsequent request for confirmation on September 23rd. The Landmarks Commission did not respond. On Friday evening, I received a call from the Manhattan Parks Commissioner saying that they would not send a representative and that the letter of explanation would follow. We will hear excerpts from the letter later in the meeting. As written in the agenda, there will be 3 presentations. A brief review of the history of the center will be given by Dena Tasse-Winter, Director of Preservation and Research, Landmarks Preservation. Please, Dena.
Thank you very much, Nault, and to the members of Community Board 2's Landmarks Committee for giving me the opportunity to present this brief history. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. See the presentation there? Is the presentation visible to all?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Great. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly talk about the history of this important building and space. It's originally called the Carmine Street Public Baths, today known as the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center. This is a 120-year-old building. And just to start with kind of contextualizing the site, the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center is located within the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2, which was designated by the Landmarks Preservation Commission on June 22nd, 2010. In an unusual move by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, the boundaries of the district were explicitly drawn to include this non-contiguous section that you can see circled in blue here, which encompasses the Recreation Center and the neighboring Hudson Park Library to its north. This decision by LPC speaks to the significance of the building and the lengths to which the Landmarks Commission went to ensure that these buildings would receive the protections that Landmarks designation affords. The building is also a contributing building to the South Village Historic District, which is listed on the state and national registers of historic places. The city, state, and federal listings all indicate that the area is significant for its immigrant heritage and its working class architecture. And the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center is a prime representative of these important histories. Zooming in on the site, the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center is located, as I'm sure many of you know, at the eastern end of James J. Walker Park, formerly known as Hudson Park, which was designed by the renowned firm Carrere and Hastings for the city of New York in 1895. Just about a decade later, in 1906, the city commissioned architecture firm Renwick, Aspinwall, and Tucker to design a public bathhouse to occupy the eastern end of the park. And the resulting building, which still stands today, has been integral to the park's design ever since. The building opened to the public on May 6, 1908, as one of at least a dozen public bathhouses constructed citywide around the turn of the century as part of an initiative to provide bathing and hygiene facilities for all New Yorkers at a time when running water was not a given in many people's homes. 2 further phases of construction occurred soon thereafter. In 1914, 7th Avenue South was extended down to Varick Street, which necessitated the demolition of a corner portion of the existing bathhouse. And I think it's worth noting that many of Greenwich Village's landmarked historic buildings were similarly impacted by the extension of the avenue. So when you walk down 7th Avenue South, you can see all these kind of triangular lots and unique conditions that were a result of the extension of the avenue. Therefore, an extension to the original bathhouse was then designed by architect Jaros Kraus, and it was erected along the new 7th Avenue South frontage by 1922. The final phase of construction occurred in 1929, when a 2-story extension with a roof pavilion on the building's west side was completed by architect Mitchell Bernstein. As you can see in this designation photograph here, it's a 3-story colonial revival style building, which features red brick with limestone details. There have been very few alterations to the exterior of the building since those 2 phases of construction concluded in 1929. So the building has been much the same for just about a century now. Other than some paint, minor window repairs and HVAC replacement, and the modern parks signage that you can see here along the ground floor entrances, The building is virtually intact to its historic design, and most original materials have been retained. These include the original Guastavino tile arch system for all floors that's used throughout its interior. The outdoor pool was constructed with funds from the Works Progress Administration in the 1930s, just a few years after the building was completed. And around this time, the building was one of 5 of those city-owned bathhouses that transitioned from a strictly hygienic purpose to be more broadly used as a recreational facility. And it remained as a physical reminder of Greenwich Village's participation in the public bathhouse movement of the early 1900s that I mentioned earlier. And it is, in fact, the only bathhouse structure on the west side of Manhattan. For the past century, the recreational facilities have been a draw not only for local community members, but for New Yorkers citywide. In the second half of the 20th century and into the 21st, people traveled from all over the city to take advantage of the free outdoor pool and other facilities. Keith Haring painted this beloved mural on the wall alongside the outdoor pool during the course of one summer day in 1987, just 3 years before his untimely death at the age of 31 due to complications from AIDS. The mural is just one of the ways in which the center is strongly connected to the neighborhood's LGBTQ+ heritage. Since the park department's plans to potentially demolish the building were revealed in July, a number of local, citywide, and state-based preservation organizations have called for the center to be preserved rather than demolished, citing the important history and significance of the building. The building has always been under the ownership of the city and has continually served the public for the duration of its nearly 120-year history. Originally, 3 city agencies operated in the building. The office of the Manhattan Borough President ran the showers and tubs on the 1st and 2nd floors, while the 3rd floor gymnasium was supervised by the Recreation Commission, later called the Department of Parks and Recreation, or the Parks Department. And the Board of Education was responsible for the roof, which served as an open-air classroom for anemic and sickly children. Today, the entire facility is under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department. To conclude this brief overview, I wanted to touch on the significance of the building's current name. Long known by locals as the Carmine Street Pool, the Recreation Center was renamed in 2003 to honor Anthony V. Dapolito, a community leader, parks and playgrounds advocate, and a longtime chair of Community Board 2, who deeply believed in the importance of preserving local landmarks and community spaces. As the son of Italian immigrants, Tony and his family had strong ties to the immigrant community of the South Village, which they called home, and the Recreation Center is integral to this important layer of the neighborhood's cultural heritage. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee. I think you're muted, Chenault, if you're speaking.
I'm sorry, I'm back. Thank you. Thank you, Dena. The Landmarks Preservation Commission is commonly referred to as the Landmarks Commission. I suggest that tonight we would be wise to give due weight to its full name, the Landmarks Preservation Commission. In the absence of a representative from the commission, Susan Gamma will read about the protocol and methodology in considering an application for demolition of a building in a historic district and the demolition by neglect. Susan, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a little, general overview of what the process would be at the landmarks preservation, what we know the process to be at the Landmarks Preservation Commission when considering demolition for a contributing building in an historic district. In order to receive approval for demolition, the applicant, in this case it would be the Parks Department, would be required to file an application at the Landmarks Preservation Commission with an argument as to why the building should be demolished. This is a many-step process, and it is extremely difficult to receive approval to demolish a historically significant building located within the designated historic district. Part of this process is public input, which is why it's so important that people are testifying today and also submitting written testimony through the Landmarks Committee website. In the event that the Parks Commission actually submits an application to the Landmarks Commission for demolition, a public meeting similar to today's with very important public testimony scheduled as part of that standard procedure. The architectural and cultural significance of the building, which Dena just shared with us, is referenced in the Landmarks Preservation Commission's designation report and is considerable. Further, the Keith Haring mural, one of his largest, is an important public artwork, and it in turn is directly related to the outdoor pool. In an extremely eccentric configuration, it's good to know that while the Dapolito Recreation Center building itself is located within the designated historic district, the pool and mural technically are not, but they are clearly part of the same campus. It's important to know that there's an obligation under the landmarks law for owners to maintain their designated buildings. The law protects landmarks from what they refer to as demolition by neglect, which occurs when buildings have deteriorated to the point of collapse or where significant architectural features are severely damaged. To prevent demolition by neglect, the LPC can take measures to hold an owner accountable in extreme cases where a building is at risk. At this time, this process has not been initiated, which we hope means that the building is not severely enough damaged to require such measures. But having not seen any hard information on that yet, clearly we don't know. So that's sort of just a general overview of demolition within a historic district. Chanel?
Thank you, Susan. Would everyone online please take care that your cameras and microphones are turned off until it's time for you to speak. We've had some cutting in from open microphones. This meeting has been called This meeting has been called because there's been sufficient discussion of demolition of the center to give concern to the public as well as to the committee and the board. We are reasonably expected that the representative of the park department would be here to give us this evening an update on their progress, their intentions, and in their absence, Susan will read a letter that I received from the commissioner on Friday night.
All right, this is an excerpt from that letter. Understand that as I read the letter, when I'm saying we, I'm referring to the Parks Department and not the Community Board, or certainly not the committee. All right. At the July 10th CB2 Joint Parks and Land Use Committee, we, Parks, presented updates on the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center and discoveries of extensive building damage. As we stated at that time, the structural damage is much more than originally anticipated, with deteriorating facades, risk of masonry falling, and structural shoring needed for the roof to stay intact. We understand that we did not have all the answers to all of the questions about the existing Tony Dapolito building at the meeting, but knew it was important to present the plans for the new recreation center in 388 Hudson at that time. Since that meeting, we have continued to gather information and assess it. This is still in process. At the meeting, Parks committed to returning to the community board by the end of the year to further discuss this issue. This is our project timeline. We anticipate having more technical details regarding the extent of the building's structural damage. We are reviewing the impacts of the engineering analysis on the building as a whole, including its facade, together with other city agencies, and will be prepared to update the community board later this year. We recognize the building is in an historic district and there are associated processes. If necessary, after the severity of the structural damage is determined, we would honor those processes, coordinating with the Landmarks Preservation Commission, CB2, and others as we know more about the path forward for this site. So this is what we heard at the end of the day on Friday from the Parks Department.
There's seats in the back.
Thank you again, Susan. This is what we know. We had hoped, of course, as I said, to hear directly from the department, and they elected not to come. So questions and comments can be based on this as well as curiosity, of course. We'll now have the comments and questions, and Susan will conduct this part of the meeting. And Susan will note the questions and consolidate them. They'll be passed along, and those that are of immediate concern here, she'll pose at the end of the question time. Thank you.
All right. There will be questions from as many members of the public who have requested to speak as the 1 hour public session permits. As stated on the website, preference is being given to residents in the neighborhood. In order, there will be comments from community groups, in this case, one very important community group, Village Presentation. So we will hear from Andrew Berman first. This will be followed by members of the public signed up to speak who are in the room, followed by members of the public who have signed up to speak who are on Zoom, and as many as can fit into the 1 hour session. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Will all of those who are on Zoom just pay attention to when their names are called, and we'll call a few at a time so that you know that you'll be up on deck next. Please ensure that your microphone is muted unless you're speaking. And when you're called upon to speak, unmute and speak. And then please mute again when you're finished speaking. Speakers may have 2 minutes to speak, and we will give you a 30-second warning. Our committee member, Brian Pape, who is on Zoom, will be giving the 30-second warning and following the timing. And I will, aggregate these questions, any questions that come along, so that at the end of the public session, if there are ones regarding history that Dena may be able to answer, Dena Tasse-Winter from Village Preservation, we can ask them of her all at once. And if there are any on just sort of general landmarks matters and how the commission works, then we'll pose those to Chenault at the end of the public session. So having said that, let's welcome Andrew Berman from Village Preservation.
May I jump in really quickly? Not everybody who has signed up to speak on Zoom is in fact on Zoom. So if I may say that Trevor Stewart, followed by Susan Parker, will follow. Andrew Berman. Oh, I'm sorry, you're going to the room first?
No, I'm going to Andrew first, and then I will.
And then the room. Forgive me, just be ready. Thank you.
May I ask a question? What did there were discussion about parameters of what we could speak about or could not speak about?
Have you signed up to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Joel Loventhal.
All right. If you've signed up to speak, you'll be called upon.
Okay, but is
That's
it,
that's
I'm not
asking a question.
talking about topos, the subjects that can be addressed or cannot be addressed?
We're exclusively dealing with the demolition aspect and how it relates to the landmark status of the building. So usage issues are not part of this conversation.
Okay, but
Okay.
am I allowed to make a general comment about the city policy? These are the public institutions.
Let's go on, and then you'll hear what the tone of the
Thanks.
testimony is. Let's go on. Andrew, please.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Andrew Berman from Village Preservation. The Tony Dapolito Center is unquestionably an incredibly historically and culturally significant building, very intentionally landmarked by the city and listed on the state and national registers of historic places. It's exactly why we have landmarking and the register. Demolishing it would fly in the face of generations of work to preserve the history and character of our neighborhoods. So many of the great landmarks of our neighborhood were, like Tony Dapolito, public buildings originally constructed for a different purpose that fell into disrepair when our government leaders said it was time to let them go. Jefferson Market Library, the Public Theater, the LGBT Community Center, the Archive Building. The list goes on and on. Under the same logic being applied to the Tony Dapolito Center, those landmarks all should have been considered expendable because someone wanted to tear them down or the city didn't want to pay the expense to repair and restore them. The city has had years to repair the center and failed to. In a more just world, instead of the Parks Department seeking to demolish the building, the Landmarks Preservation Commission would be pursuing a demolition by neglect case against them, forcing them to repair and restore the building. But they're not and likely won't, so it's up to us to stand up for saving this building and demanding it be restored and returned to public community use. No matter what happens with 388 Hudson Street and any new recreational facilities that may or may not be built there years down the road, the Tony Dapolito Center should be restored and again serve as a public recreation center, as well as a gateway to the outdoor public pool and Keith Haring mural, both of which cannot be moved to 388 Hudson Street. The city's arguments for demolition of the center, that it's old, it would be costly to repair, it's been altered over time, frankly, would at one time or another apply to almost any landmarked building in our neighborhood. Those criteria cannot become acceptable rationales for demolition. By far, the majority of landmark buildings in Greenwich Village are actually older than this one, and their owners have infinitely fewer resources than the city of New York to repair them. And yet they are expected and required to maintain and repair those buildings, and they do. We should expect no less from the city, especially when it's a building that, like this, serves such a much-needed public purpose. The arguments for demolishing the center are almost exactly the same as those made over 60 years ago to demolish Penn Station. It's outdated, requires expensive repairs, and should be replaced with something more modern. But these two demolition plans share one more important thing in common. It's not really about the condition of the building. It's about what they want to build on the very valuable real estate underneath instead. Ironically, it was during Robert Moses era of destroying our city's great landmarks that Tony Dapolito, for whom the center is named, originally rose to prominence, fighting against those sorts of destructive plans and for preserving our community touchstones and services. Demolishing the building named to honor Tony Dapolito's legacy, a building which offered services and community to generations of villagers and New Yorkers, would be a tragic and unforgivable mistake. Let's make sure it doesn't happen on our watch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We really value what you just said. Thank you. We're going to move now to to listen to people who have come to the room who have signed up. So I will read your names and please be ready to speak. Our first speaker in the room is Summer Omar. Are you here, Summer?
No, but I want to know, I didn't know how to sign up and I want to put my name on the list.
There will be a way for you to submit written testimony because we've got kind of a full deck. Although if it turns out that we don't fill the time, I'd be happy to call it at that point. But if not, please submit written testimony via our website. Thank you. So Summer isn't here. All right. I will read the other names. Next on our list is Dr. Gil Horowitz. Dr. Horowitz, please come and sit at the table up here and make sure that let's make sure the microphone is close to you. Either is fine.
I'm Dr. Gil Horowitz, a lifetime New Yorker for approximately 88 years. In December, I will be 88. Long before I was born, the now designated Tony Dapolito Recreation Center was already there. It is a venerable landmark in New York City, which should be with us long after I am dead, which at the moment I'm not. I have been
All right.
I have been a member of this board, appointed by my then city council person, had the pleasure of serving with prior colleagues. And I'm proud that the board has done some very good things to protect our city from capricious, arbitrary, and very dumb ideas that the city from time to time gets. This has to be one of the dumbest that the city of New York has ever come up with. Sure, it would be less expensive to just tear it down, not repair it, and leave us with nothing. At St. Vincent's, we were promised a beautiful new hospital, 30 stories tall, modern, much better than the hospital that was there then. What did we get? Luxury condominiums by the Rudin family. We have no idea what will actually be built on that land. They could promise anything, but there is no guarantee that we would get anything of value to us and our community.
Please wrap up, sir.
It is time to stand up against this horrible idea. I hope my community board has the daring strength, consciousness, and conviction to say no to the demolition of the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center. I worked with Tony Dapolito. We met at in that very building, the Parks Commission. Tony Dapolito would be turning over in his grave if he knew what was being planned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Hear from Joel Lobenthal.
Sit here.
Yes, that would be great, followed by Alfred Fuente. Is Alfred Fuente here? Yes. Yes.
Why don't you make your way up?
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Joel. Shall I start?
Please.
Please do.
My name is Joel Lobenthal. I have lived on Jane Street for 35 years, which is virtually my entire adult life. I want to say the closing of the center in perpetuity now is a catastrophe for me because I'm diabetic. I was used to going there 3 times a week using the stationary bikes. Since it's been closed, my blood sugar has gone haywire up and down constantly, where it was controlled at that point due to my exercise more than anything else. So I'm personally wounded by this, I have to say. And now we are in a city that is ever less affordable to working people. This is actually, and this circuit of public gyms is one of the very few institutions that is in any way a benefit to working people. I have absolutely no faith in the city's promises because I've just recently lived through the 9th Avenue houses that were irredeemably flawed. We were told had to be torn down. Then we find that there were letters that were covert, that were suppressed, that established that they could be repaired. So we're talking about a lot of dishonesty here. The city's blandishments are meaningless at this point. And I also don't understand why, since after the pandemic, work was started on repairing it, that's 3+ years and it can't be fixed. I've never heard of such incompetency, ever. Let's see. We also, do I have 30 seconds?
You have about 40 seconds.
Okay. We've seen with the Dena Library how the city keeps tearing down independently existing public buildings and institutions, and then putting them, which happened with Dena, in the basement of a new expensive hotel. So, I mean, yes, the Dena replacement is clean and lovely, et cetera, but it is simply treated as a tenant, whereas before it had its own freestanding independent building. So if this gym ever went into yet another condo monster tower, it would not be in any way a dignified correlation to what it is now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
After Alfred Fuente speaks, is DC Symbolista.
She left the room and will be online.
Okay, so then we'll wait till the Zoom session for your testimony, and we'll go to Lucille DeVito if she is here.
She's over there.
Okay, so you'll be after Alfred. Thank you. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alfred Fuente. Thank you very much to the board and to the committee for taking into consideration my testimony this evening. I'm here this evening in opposition to the demolition of the Tony Dapolito Center and in support of affirmative litigation on behalf of the district as well as the community board, if it were to so consider such. The city has an affirmative obligation to protect our city heritage, our city culture, and as Mr. Berman touched upon earlier this evening, the value underlying that building. And by continuing to allow the building to deteriorate, it is lowering the value of that building. It is having not only a financial impact on our city's land, it is also having an impact on our city's culture. I am a real estate attorney that regularly represents clients before city agencies, including the Department of Buildings, as well as the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection and the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement. If you were to listen to the city, they would let you know that my clients, according to them, are a constellation of bad hombres, and they work as hard as they possibly can to force my clients to undertake expensive work and renovation in order to do whatever is necessary for my clients' properties to be in compliance with the law, whether we're talking about small businesses or we're talking about real estate. However, in this case, they are deliberately allowing the deterioration of an asset to this building so that it can subsequently use the deterioration of that building in an effort to impact other real estate projects nearby, namely 388 Hudson Street. So I strongly urge the board to consider all of these different aspects, and for that reason to require LPC to begin a proceeding against the Parks Department for its failure to properly maintain the Tony Dapolito Center. As a father of a 6-year-old who can definitely benefit from a recreation center, it is, I on a personal level, strongly urge you to maintain that cultural heritage for our children, as well as for parents to allow us to have a bit of outlet for those children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lucille, come on up.
Okay, I'm gonna read my little speech.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'm proud to say that I'm a third-generation resident of Greenwich Village, and my daughter is a fourth-generation resident. Tourists from all over the country and the world come to Greenwich Village to admire its iconic architecture and quaint streets. People dream of living here because of the historic nature of the neighborhood and the close-knit community that they've seen reflected through iconic TV shows and movies. Slowly but steadily, government officials and developers are destroying the history and the community of the village. And right now, it's iconic that they want to tear down the building named after the man that stopped the village itself from being torn down. Tony Dapolito was a lifelong villager and a member of Community Board 2 for over 50 years. During that time, he was key in fighting against Robert Moses' plan to raise the slum of the village to make room for the Lower Manhattan Expressway. I think it's poor form and laughably ironic that we are now considering tearing down a landmark building dedicated to the man who helped to save our historic neighborhood from destruction. We should be preserving our history and our neighborhood, not destroying it. I know that no tourists come to the village to see the rec center, but it's still one of those historic buildings in our neighborhood that needs to be preserved, especially because it can still serve a vital purpose. It can still function as a meeting place, and it can still offer affordable recreation options for our community. I demand to know why that's not enough to justify the city's investment in it. It's shameful that we're being told that we're not worth it. This echoes of the St. Vincent's Hospital real estate deal, a historic building serving the people converted into condos because no one wants to invest in the health of the community. God help you if you actually want to live in the village and have access to medical care, or in this case, a community center that encourages physical health and community engagement. Why are they swapping out condos for things like building our actual community? It's absurd. It's real estate greed, replacing investment in people that actually live here, despite the fact that the people that actually live here are the ones that preserve the neighborhood we all love and others want to visit so much. Tony Dapolito must be rolling in his grave that we're even having this conversation. So once again, in the name of quote, progress, unquote, and quote, modernization, quote, the village is suffering. It's losing its character and its, okay, I have two more sentences. Character and community to ugly new buildings that do not meet the neighborhood's historic character, nor serve the community's actual needs. We are hearing about how tearing down the entire center for adults and children and replacing it with 2 floors in the basement of a new building is somehow better than just rebuilding the center itself. It's shameful that you closed the rec center for 4 years, allowing it to deteriorate even further. And now we're being told it costs too much money to repair. Show us proof it can't be rebuilt. Show us finances for what it would cost. Have transparency in this process. Otherwise, it's hard to trust that some developer isn't just waiting in the wings to profit off of the community's loss.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Well said. Thank you. You'll make sure to give Mark your hard copy of that letter. Thank you. I think that is everybody who signed up. If after the Zoom session, there's time within the hour, I'll make sure to call on you. You signed up to speak? 2 people are in here who signed up to
What are your
speak.
names? I don't see you on the list and I don't see you on this list.
Did you sign up to speak or just to come to the meeting?
No, both. I didn't, you know,
Not here.
I didn't speak first, then I thought.
Nope, it's not here.
Nora?
Nora, yes, I have you as a Zoom person, but you're in person?
Well,
Okay.
come on up, Nora. And who was the other person? No, we know what, well, because we don't have it here, if there's time at the end after we've gone to the people who connected with the software and the way that we have the information, then we'd be happy to call on you. Okay.
For context, I'm Nora Kaloran. I was born on Commerce Street in 1971 in what was St. Vincent's, demolished for condos. So I'm speaking as a lifelong villager to say I used Tony Dapolito Center my whole life as a young child, a teenager, after college. So as a community center is very important, but also architecturally, I don't think I can elaborate on anything that anyone said this evening because they've really said everything that I think and feel. I only want to add that I actually find it criminal that our government and our city leaders have allowed this to happen. And if any of us think that it's not because of developers, then we're fooling ourselves. Because if you've been living in the village and you've seen what's going on, you know exactly what's going on. I don't want to drag the mayor into this conversation, but considering he's under indictment, I would say it's pretty clear what our city representatives think about us and want to do with our taxpayer money. I don't want to fund developers. I want a recreation center. And in terms of equity and inclusion, this was probably the last remaining space in Greenwich Village that was equitable and that really represented our city. And I would really like to force our representatives who we pay with our tax money to do what is right for the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Else signed up to speak? Who's in the room? Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to get to you and to you. All right, we're going to move to our Zoom attendees now. The first 5 people are Blaine Birchby, Susan Parker, Alan Winroth, Kate Stearns, and Catherine Jason.
Of them, I only see Susan Parker, and she's been elevated and ready to speak.
Okay. After Susan, then, if none of the others are here, we'll go to Mary Ann Arisman, John Sosnowski, Trevor Stewart, and Anna Shapiro.
Of them, all are available except John Sosnowski.
Okay, so we'll go to, so if those others could be ready to go, we'll start now with, was it Kate Stearns, did you say was there?
The first one you said was
Blaine.
Blaine is not here. Susan Parker is the only one. of
Okay,
that 5.
Susan.
Yes.
Susan Parker, please unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
And she can turn her camera on if she wants.
And you can turn your camera on at this point, please. We would love to see your face.
I've promoted her, but let me just make sure.
We're checking to make sure you've been promoted.
Pretty sure she's here. She was. Yeah, no. She was here.
They should raise their hand, right?
Maybe. Is that what happened? All right, sorry about that. I thought that I had promoted her. Here she is. Okay. Now ready to go.
Okay, Susan Parker, hopefully you've been elevated and can speak now. She can't open her mic.
Okay, let me find her. Susan, where is she? Did she decline?
She can't open her mic. I don't know.
Okay. Tell you what, in the interest of time, I'm just going to let her speak.
Did you ask her to raise her hand?
Okay. So Susan Parker, I've just given you an invitation to become a panelist. Please click yes. That's true for everybody. If you see that.
I just found it. Can you hear me now?
Right.
Yes,
Excellent.
thank you. Great.
I'm so sorry. I'm not good at this. Okay, I'm 78 years old. I've been using that rec center for ages. The pool, the gym. I loved going there. I loved going there to swim with little kids, with older people. It was, and the building is a treasure. You will never replace that by sticking us in a basement of a building that doesn't even exist. I really, really beg this committee to put forth some plan to save it. I notice on the mayor's website that they found millions of dollars to put into other recreation centers for upgraded facilities when ours is allowed to just languish. And I would really like someone to tell me why that should be the case. This is a neighborhood treasure. We need it, we need it, we need it. We don't have anything like it anywhere in the neighborhood. So that's basically my plea to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go now to Mary Ann Arisman. Mary Ann, please unmute yourself.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Great, we can hear and see you. Perfect, thank you.
Good. I'm Mary Ann Arisman, obviously, and I am chair of the St. Luke's Place Block Association, which is a 1-block series of 15 intact historic townhouses. We well know the cost of maintaining these valuable, amazing buildings. It's something that we do, and those who preceded us have done over more than 150 years. The townhouses that we live in were built in the mid to early 1850s. And if we had not, or any one of the predecessors had not, they would have been cited by the city for demolition by neglect. But, you know, there we are. We are living and privileged to be living in these beautiful buildings. And people continue to want to live in these buildings. It's part of our heritage and it's part of our history. And the city is derelict, woefully derelict in not supporting and maintaining their building. They should be cited for demolition by neglect.
30 seconds, please.
We support the Landmarks Committee in their resolution to fight the demolition of the beautiful building. It is in a prominent spot in our community. We need to continue to maintain it. And one of the members of my...
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, thank you very much.
Marianne, excuse me, I'd like to ask her a question. Marianne, are you still there?
I'm here.
Could, in the unlikely event that someone is unfamiliar with the village, would you tell us what you see when you look out your front window and a little toward the east?
I can see the Tony Dapolito building. I can see the all of James J. Walker Park. We're right in the middle of the block. So my view is amazing. We can see the library building. We can see the pickleball courts and hear the pickleball courts. We can also hear the children playing in the children's playground. We can see the soccer games and the softball games that go on till all hours of the night, but happy noise and good people just playing. And it's a joy. And that's what Tony Dapolito brought, the rec center brought to our amazing community. And it, again, on 7th Avenue and on Clarkson Street, it continues to be in such a prominent site facing those two major intersections that, you know, we don't want a blah building or a new renovated building. It's almost the southern entrance to the village, and it's important for that reason. It's
okay. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the next group of 5. If I call your name and you're here, please raise your hand so that Mark can see and make sure that he's already elevated you to panelist. Trevor Stewart, if you're here, you would be next, followed by Anna Shapiro, Don Baird, Vinciane Albrecht, and Andrea Newstein and Alex Newstein.
Of them, only Trevor and Anna are here as far as I know.
All right, well, Trevor, please unmute yourself. And Anna, please be ready to speak after Trevor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the committee. What's happening or is planned to be happening to the Dapolito Recreation Center is quite appalling. I mean, we're talking about something that's a city landmark, it's a state landmark, it's a national landmark, it's a kind of landmark trifecta, and yet the city's kept it closed for 5 years. It's deprived the community of a much needed amenity. It's done precious little, if anything, to restore it. It's let it deteriorate to the point where now they're probably going to claim that it needs to be demolished because it's past repair. I mean, this is crazy. They say that it'll be cheaper and quicker to move to the new development on 388 Hudson. That's a highly dubious claim. And as many people have commented so far, do you really want to be in the basement of a huge new building? It's not the same thing at all. The Dapolito Center is basically irrepressible. But of course, we know what's going on. It occupies a fantastic site in the village. It's on it abuts J.J. Walker Park, the library, and it's a fabulous place for a gleaming new development that some property developer will come in and make a ton of money out of. And that's what's scandalous. And the city's totally failed to provide a clear rationale for the need to demolish rather than to repair the center. And that it should demolish such an important landmark building that's actually serving a vital community need, as we've heard from a number of people. And it's unwilling to say what it will be used for is kind of scandalous. It's really troublesome for the implications for our neighborhood and beyond. So the right thing for the city to do is, as people have said, is to repair the Tony Dapolito Center as soon as possible and return it to its intended parks and recreation purpose. And I absolutely fully support the things that your committee is doing. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trevor. We'll move to Anna now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I second everything everyone has said. I don't think there's any disagreement. The fundamental problem is the way developers fund political campaigns everywhere, but in our city, particularly the real estate lobby, you could say, runs New York City more than any officials. And that is really our core fight, though I don't see much scope for winning it, but that is a fire hose of money against the pipsqueak voices of the people. Obviously, we have the high ground. We have the votes, but it is very rare for anyone to run in this city without taking campaign money from real estate. And of course, real estate people have other ways of getting money to politicians. So I think that's the only thing I can add. I think everyone sees what's going on here. You know, it would be totally a crime to destroy this building that's in our hearts. That's all.
Thank you so much, Anna. We really value your testimony. Thank you so much, and everybody's testimony. I think that's everybody who's on Zoom who has signed up to speak, but there's been a bit of jumble because some who signed up to speak in person are on Zoom and some who signed up to speak on Zoom have turned out to be in person. So if you are, okay, I see that.
So if I may.
Yes.
Victoria Hillstrom signed up to speak and she is now on Zoom and she's elevated and ready
Okay,
to speak.
Victoria Hillstrom, please. And I think, and DC.
Hello, everyone.
And DC, she'll be followed by DC Symbolista. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Victoria Hillstrom. Thank you for having me. We are all extremely disappointed that the city has allowed this gorgeous landmark to fall into disrepair. And I think that given the very serious brevity of the investigations against the mayor and many of our government agencies, I think that we all need to really lean on the Landmark Preservation Commission to do the right thing. I think this is very appropriate at this time, and we would all be absolutely heartbroken and bewildered to lose such an important building. And of course, the artist work that can never be replaced. So I thank you very much for having me. And of course, I agree with everything everyone in the community has said. It would be an absolute shame to lose this very important building over what is clearly negligence on the city's part. And we just don't want to see it anymore. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. DC, are you here? Are you with us?
I'm here. Thank you so
Great,
much
thank
for.
you.
I appreciate being able to participate. I am a 40-year West Village resident. I live on Downing Street, just across from the Dapolito Center. I've enjoyed working out, sort of swimming there, but I also have real concern that a piece of Italian history and Italian heritage, I'm Italian, and of gay history and gay heritage is being torn down, and I'm bisexual. It's a piece of my identity that is being taken away. And it's being taken away because the city doesn't understand what our mothers have always taught us. That is, if something is unique, if something is valuable, if something is emotional, you don't throw it away. You preserve it, you take care of it. You do everything you can to make sure that it stays and is part of you. And that is, you do that with your favorite teapot, you do it with your teddy bear, you do it with buildings that are precious. And that is what the city does not understand. And when we don't destroy, we repair. We know that it is important, especially these days. So I would gather that the issue is not only one of historical preservation, but it's a preservation of identity, it's a preservation of pride, and it's an emotional preservation that we all want. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you. That was really a valuable addition to the conversation. Thank you so much. We've also got Anita Isola, Laura Tenenbaum, and Corinne Moreno, who apparently have signed up. So if you three would.
Anita initially declined, but I'll try again.
Well, she put something in the chat.
Okay. And Laura Tenenbaum. Corinne is ready.
All right, Corinne, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I've been a member of the West Village community as a resident for many years now. Specifically right now on St. Luke's Street or St. Luke's Place. I can't believe I did that. Since 2008. Both my kids were born at St. Vincent's, and I was completely shocked when the hospital closed soon after my son's birth. So I'm now trying to be present and aware of things like this that are happening within our community. I oppose the proposal to demolish Dapolito. Both my kids and myself, we would use the pool every summer. And my son, as soon as he was old enough, he got a membership to use the gym and use the basketball courts. So it was a real shock, and I had no idea what was going on as to why it was closed for all these years until, thank goodness, Mary Ann brought it to my attention. So I think that's all I wanted to add. I'm very happy to see the support from the community about preserving this very important landmark building for the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Tenenbaum, are you ready to speak?
I am.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Laura Tenenbaum. I live in Soho, but I have a lot of ties to the Tony Dapolito Recreation Center. Tony used to drive me around in his truck to community board meetings and other things. So I have that connection. My husband and I met and lived in the West Village. We lived in West Beth. My son attended St. Luke's School. I edited the St. Luke's directory for years, volunteered for the school, didn't realize it was for the church, which was an odd for a Jewish woman doing that, but that's how it ended up. And My husband was the rec director for the center for a good number of years. So a lot of ties. And going by it, and in addition to that, on the library, I was on the advisory committee for the Early Childhood Center that was experimental, that was held at the library. So all of this means that the recreation center has a lot of meaning to people just outside of the 5 or 6 or 10 blocks around it. New York City is controlled by the Real Estate Board of New York. And we all know, as others have said, that's why this is happening. This ploy of demolition by neglect is something we've been seeing in our community over and over and over again. And to have it being done by our government to something that is so important historically in our neighborhood is distressing and despicable. The Keith Haring mural is important on its own level. It cannot and should not be destroyed. I'm concerned about damage to the library should any real construction or destruction take place. We just can't discard what's important to us so easily. Our history is important.
Please wrap up.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Anita Isola, you're next.
Hello, my name is Anita Isola. I have been in the village my whole life. As a matter of fact, my first 5 years were at 243 Bleecker Street. And my mother grew up at 243 Bleecker Street. They're like 3 blocks from the center that we're talking about. And my grandparents had the pastry shop there for many, many years. Well, you know, I've watched things in the village change and get mutilated, and it just seems to go on and on. But this one really does take the cake. This was the center of an incredible community. I'm also I'm Italian American, and this was once a giant Italian American area. That's changed, but nonetheless, these were my roots. I remember my mom telling me she went to the Hudson Library next door there. My son went to St. Luke's. And it is very obvious that the city has permitted this to deteriorate so that they could turn around one day and say, well, you know, it's too expensive to do anything, as they've said so many times before. And it's maddening to see this happen again and again, but certainly in this area. You know, one other point is to add insult to injury. I cannot believe that they are not indicating what their plans are. And you know they have them, and they must be bad, otherwise they might say something. So I hope that it doesn't happen. That's what I'm here to testify about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, apparently there are people writing in the chat who signed up to speak, and there are a couple people in the room as well who did, and for whatever reason, their sign up did not migrate onto the software that the community board received. So, you know, we're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. We're getting close to the end of the hour, but I would like to see if anybody who is in Zoom could please raise hands, only if you signed up to speak and you haven't been called upon. And while Mark sorts that out, I will. She's
already there. Oh, she did. Oh, so sorry.
Please, Mark, let me
I'm so
handle
sorry.
this.
Okay.
So if you have signed up to testify and you're on Zoom and we didn't call your name, it's because your name didn't appear on our spreadsheet. So I'm asking you to do that now so that Mark can elevate you to panelist so that you may have the opportunity to speak. And while Mark is doing that, I'd like to go back to the two people in the room here, our two neighbors who came to testify here.
Except one exception. I noticed my son's name came up. He's in California. So I will give my place to him. I don't know. It suddenly came up on the.
Well, you guys sort that out, text each other and see who.
Okay, never mind. I'll get it.
No, if you would like him.
I would, but I don't know how to get to him.
Oh, all right. So come and speak. You're here. We'd like to hear from you. I'm sure you are too.
Again, I actually have, everything that everyone has said has been so great and it's covered so much. And I've talked before, Sandra Cohn.
Thank you, Sandra.
I have a letter I wrote to actually Andrew Berman and to the community board. It's my son's letter, so I'll give them to you. And instead of reading them, I just want to, just a few points because it's covered there and I don't know what everyone said was so fabulous. But just a couple of things. Since I swam, I've been going there. I live around the corner, been going there 55 years since I've lived on Morton Street. My son grew up, he started going to the library at what age before, 18 months. He used the pool and it's in there. He became a counselor. There are just many ways in which that center is central. But in terms of swimming, all I can think of is David, who I see now, he's Parkinson's. He was going to the pool every day walking. First swimming, then he started walking. Now I see he's having a very hard time. And every time we talk, I said, is there anywhere you can go swimming? Because swimming has absolutely helped him. Or Chloe with the braces, coming with braces. Me, who swam and I never had a heart problem until I stopped swimming. And suddenly those are individual things. But what I want to ask you, as you said, is the community board is a link to the city. And that we're all on the same side. What can we do? What can you suggest? Can we go and have petitions? I mean, we could collect thousands of petitions. I know we can. I mean, there must be some way, as you're the link, to help us do something besides just complain and write what it means to us to have this loss. I mean, we all want something restored instead of demolished, but what can we do? Will petitions help? I mean, believe me, I could go to Abington Square, I could go to the park. We used to do that for other things, for Westway.
We could have this conversation sort of offline, but typically when these kind of things happen, there are sort of these multimodal approaches where there are advocacy organizations like Village Preservation. And if you go on their website, you will see.
No, it's fantastic, but I mean.
Then on the community board, you can follow along. We have information on the community board website. And then also often in these situations, neighborhood residents on their own organize. So there's often a multimodal.
Well, I'm asking you then,
we've got to continue the testimony.
I'm just asking, do you think it's important, let's say if we.
I think I'm speaking as just a human being. I think as a human being, I think that the more noise, the better when there are people who.
So you can't suggest anything. I mean, the line going on is fine. I can press everybody.
Board doesn't organize a petition. What we do instead is issue a statement of opinion. And I just want to make very clear, although we've said it a couple of times before, that we are very strongly opposed to the demolition.
Right. Well,
and you will see the resolution that was approved at the full board meeting last week that is online and that Valerie put in the chat and is also on the website. So that's what we can do.
Okay.
And we will continue to stay on it and keep the community informed. And as this continues, we will do anything that's
what I'm saying,
power
to have a voice to the link to the city. I mean, you need us behind. You need masses.
And that's what we're doing right here. And that's what we're doing right here. But there's more. This is the beginning. Anyway, we have not received a proposal on this yet. And our interest is to get on the front foot here. And that's what we are doing tonight, just to be clear. Okay, thank you so much.
Madame, est-ce que je peux dire, can I say two, three something, a very quick something? I just
coming back from France. I lived since 30 years, my American husband on Martin, but I want to have a proposal because I follow this up since months. I was also in France. So how many people do you have here for this? Thousand?
Yeah, we're not.
Okay, this has got to stop.
This is a very organized meeting and people have signed up to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah,
But
make
you're
a-
welcome to put something online and send a letter.
Make a
to the community board.
demonstration.
Could you please- But you two should get together
Or we
and
could
organize.
get your list, right?
You two get together and organize. Here you go. Yes, just sit close to the microphone so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wish I knew about signing up before. My name is Natalie A. Soleil. I am a former resident, actually, of Washington Square Village, and economics and family politics pushed me out of the neighborhood. So I've lived in Brooklyn a long time, but I still use the Tony Dapolito Center, which I started using in 2003. And it saved my health, especially when I had sciatica. It was an integral part of restoring my health then. And swimming is still very important. And I also paid attention to the demographics of the use of the center over time. That the Tony Dapolito Center is used not just by Greenwich Village residents. It's used by a broad demographic, African Americans, Latinos, people who don't have money. And part of the Parks Without Borders, which I have been a part of fighting in Brooklyn with the Friends of Fort Greene Park, where the city hid information and we had to request a FOIL to fight. They were going to tear down 70 trees. And again, that was part of a developer's goal to make the corner of Fort Greene Park into something that they could put on their brochures. And it's an ecological nightmare. I'm a geographer by training. So what I want to say is there is social engineering going on here, because what they're going to push out when they tear down the Tony Dapolito Center is all the community of color and low income that uses that, not just the Greenwich Village residents. The same people use the pool. That pool with the Keith Haring, that was such a big part of my life 20 years ago. So I think we have to use linkage. If we have to look for a FOIL, let's ask for a FOIL, whatever we need to show what obfuscation is going on by the city and what corruption is there in being in bed with developers. And then finally, that whole public area, including the library, talking about the only public space, well, the library is part of that. That's community space throughout that whole geography. So when you tear down the Dapolito Center, and if you put a building there, you're destroying the spatial integration of a whole public space, a whole public allocation of land. Well,
Please wrap up.
the soccer fields, the bocce court, all that's going to get destroyed when you put up a big building that casts a big shadow. It's not going to be the same. So there's a big argument to fight this every possible way. And if we need to have a lawsuit, that's what we have to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go back to Zoom now, and we'll go to Dyson Cohn, followed by Alex Bandon.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dyson Cohn Williams. I grew up on Morton Street. I live part-time in Los Angeles, and when I come home, I always would go back to what we effectively called the Carmine Street Gym. I learned how to play basketball there. People that I grew up with there went to the NBA. I learned how to swim there. I learned how to read at the library. I learned how to play baseball at the field around the corner. I cannot tell you how many people that I grew up with went on to have incredibly successful lives, in no small part because they had access to a place to go. And even in Greenwich Village, which is now a very expensive and affluent neighborhood, which it was not in the 80s, not the same way it is now, kids still need a place to go. I work with kids. I've been a teacher in New York City in high schools. I am a life coach for teenagers and families. It doesn't matter how much money a kid has, they need a place to go. One of the things that I've written in about is to pitch that you start looking at the businesses in the community. Because when we were growing up, the businesses were active in helping fund basketball leagues. For example, this t-shirt is from 1995. I only have this t-shirt from 1995 because my memories of growing up in that place are so fundamental to the man that I am today, to the communities that I live in. Now you get the businesses involved, it's better for them. The gym is at the nexus point of business section of the neighborhood, of the social part of the neighborhood, and of the residential part of the neighborhood, which means you get all different types of people coming to that recreation center who would never have had access to meet each other. Black, white, gay, straight, it goes on and on and on. That's the impact that that place has made in people's lives. I want to finish with this. The other day was the anniversary of Ray Pagan's death. Ray Pagan was the person who basically ran the gym in all the basketball courts, all the programs for kids, the camp for kids in the summertime. He was a fixture for decades and decades. He saved people's lives. He made people what they are. I wouldn't work with kids if I didn't know, if I hadn't had the access to Ray Pagan growing up. I can't imagine that he would be happy with what's going on, but I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't be surprised. And that's the problem. If you're going to live in a neighborhood, you have to make it a neighborhood. I think that collectively, all of you and all of the people in the neighborhood, if you are tapping in to those businesses, to those people who are already lawyers who use this facility.
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up. I'm in the wrap up. I'm in the wrap up section. Okay. If you tap all of those people, you have far more ammunition because this is New York and money talks. Thank you for listening to me save my childhood home.
Thank you.
Two.
Thank you very much. Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Bandon. I am a 36-year resident of the village. And I know, and I am a frequent user of the facility, but I know that we're here to talk about the architecture and the building itself. So let me just say this. I live in the village because of the character of the buildings of the village. I'm a history buff. I'm also, I worked for years for This Old House. I'm a journalist who's written about historic buildings. I now work as a project manager doing renovations. I care about the architecture. And one of the things that I love about the village is how, if any of you are like me, you've done this a million times. You walk around, you admire, you see the beauty, you love the character, but you can't go inside. You can't see the history inside most of what you're looking at. This is a living and breathing building where you can walk inside and experience the history of the village, the history of bathhouses in New York City, which is such a unique and wonderful history. It's a place that's used by the elderly and the young at the same time. It's a community center that is available to everybody. And it is one of the only places like that left in the village where you can walk inside and see what this neighborhood used to be and what it was about when it became the famous The Village. So I'll keep it short. That's all I want to say about it. But I echo everybody else's sentiments about the use of the building.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now, I just want to make sure that there isn't anybody else on Zoom who signed up. If you are on Zoom and you signed up to speak and you haven't had the chance, please raise your hand. So it looks like two more people, Susan Stewart and Shelley Warwick.
If you want to hear from Susan Stewart, you sign up.
Well, our sheet is wrong. That's what we're trying to rectify here. Susan, you'll be elevated to speak, followed by Shelley, and then we will close the public session. Go ahead, Susan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, very good. This is John. Her husband Susan couldn't make it.
Okay.
But I want to say shame on the Parks Department, because for the last 5 years, they spent more time and money plotting to rebuild the Dapolito Recreation Center than actually renovating it. They misled the public, claiming renovations were I called up regularly, and they would say the renovations are nearly complete, one more month. This went on for over a year. Then they claimed it was COVID. They've let it fall into disrepair, as everybody said, hopefully making it easier to get the building condemned. And since the Parks Department has declined to attend the meeting, we know that they've been meeting with developers, et cetera, behind closed doors. And what we actually need is an independent inspection of the building. It's like a landlord doing elevator inspections themselves. Our landlord did that, a member of the village, and we had numerous complaints that the elevators were in bad shape. And we were due to go to court, and luckily, the day before the court, the elevator fell to the bottom and nobody was injured. And the judge said, I don't want to hear about your self-inspections anymore. You can't have the fox guarding the hen house. We need an independent inspection of the building, and we also need lawsuits against people who are colluding.
Thank you. You've got 30 seconds left.
That should wrap it up. Everybody else discussed all the other things very well that I was going to bring up. And thank you very much. But we really need independence, not somebody telling us,
Thank you. And last but not least is.
Get in there.
Shelley.
I'm Shelley Warwick. I'm the Secretary of BAMRA, which we have.
Oh, great. Great.
Which we have sent a letter opposing this as a community organization. I'm a longtime resident of the village, 55 years now. And I have used the center. I second all the things we've said. It's a historic building. It's a major community center. It really must be preserved for multiple reasons, as have been stated by many people, maybe more eloquently than I am. And I think it is important that we gather all the forces, all the approaches to stopping this destruction, whether it's lawsuits, petitions, independent inspections, foils, or whatever it is, that we need a multi-pronged approach to stop it. Now, whether it will stop it or just delay it, we don't know. But the more energy they have to put in to fighting it, we make them fight to destroy it.
Thank you, Shelley. That will wrap up the public session. And now we're going to move on to members of the CB2 board. If you're a board member and you wish to speak, if you're in the room, please raise your hand. And if you are on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand if you're a board member who wishes to speak. Lois.
Should I sit over there?
Just sit.
We'll bring
the microphone.
To bring up another point that was slightly mentioned, that the building.
Excuse me, Lois, somebody in the public has an unmuted microphone. Can everybody please restore to mute?
Ain't so late. That's why we should be eating all this much.
So,
A little something. It makes no sound.
All right. Okay.
you can
have
Try it. When I moved to the village, first thing I did was join the Carmine Dapolito Center. And my son also, and we worked out and we went swimming. But then I realized, as I got to know the neighborhood, particularly through BAMRA, that the centers origins were as a public bath. And as I was working out, I was talking to people, and I realized that some of the people that I was working out with are at the time called homeless, are now called unhoused. And they were using the facilities to wash, to cleanse themselves, to work out, get healthy, and to participate in a social environment that did not ostracize them from one person to another. So I would say that it's a vital need for this community and for, as other people said, for this city to use it as public health and for public cleanliness and the children and all, for particularly for the health reasons.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else from the board? I don't see any raised hands, so we'll move to Landmarks Committee members. If there's anybody on the Landmarks Committee, Valerie.
Yeah, I have a question for Andrew or Dena. How does there's 5 charter revisions on the ballot this November, and so there's one about capital planning and facilities and the current use of facilities. Does Village Preservation have a position on that as it relates to landmark buildings, and how how the city communicates the infrastructure needs for landmark buildings, particularly this one, but since that measure's on the ballot?
Right. We don't, but you're raising an important issue, and it sounds like one we should look into further in terms of what the implications might be for something like this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. And I see that Community Board member Mar Fitzgerald has her hand up. Hi, Mar. Please go ahead.
Hi, sorry I wasn't quicker. I spoke at the last meeting about this, but I just wanted to say, I totally oppose the demolition. I absolutely support, the restoration of this building. I grew up going to that rec center. It was a huge resource for the children of the village. And, we have so many schools around it now. I mean, they've been there for a long time, but now we have Morton, which is very close. And what a wonderful resource this would be for our kids if it were restored. So, I support the work the committee's doing. I wish our other committees were amplifying the true voice of the community, which as is our mandate. But save Dapolito, save the Carmine Street pool. Thank you.
Thanks, Mar. Brian.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, I just thought I would put in there, as a historic preservation architect and with a lot of experience in saving old buildings, that conditions can look rather dire, but they can be saved, and they can be saved for another 100 years by just some careful remedial actions. So there's really the onus is on the city to show a true engineering report with cost estimates and structural analysis to convince anyone that this can't be saved. So anything less should not be believed. And I think that we have to hold their feet to the fire, and we have to demand that this kind of in-depth analysis be shown to the public before anybody talks about demolition. So obviously I want to see this saved and preserved for the future generations. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to call on myself last. Chenault, there haven't really been questions. There's been just an incredible commentary, but actually no questions. I have a question, which I think,
Well, I'll recognize you, Susan.
Okay, which I think we need an answer to from LPC, and maybe Andrew will be able to speak to whether there have been other issues of this. But I'm very concerned about a potential double standard here. We all know that as a result of some really horrible situations that have occurred in this neighborhood and others where historic buildings were allowed to fall apart, and this demolition by neglect has occurred, and there's been a lot of activism around that, and in response to the activism, there was a promise by the city to kind of have a more accountable situation going so that things couldn't so readily fall between the cracks with city agencies, so that there would be fewer of these oops situations. And as a result of that, there was a little while, about a year ago, where we saw a flood of activity in buildings, certainly within our community, where private owners were having their feet held to the fire on these demolition by neglect cases. My question is there a different standard for city-owned buildings than there is for privately owned buildings when it comes to demolition by neglect? And I would hope that there isn't, but I would be very interested to know the answer to that question, which I think will have to come from LPC. But I'm wondering, Andrew or Dena, if you might be aware of other similar situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. Certainly by law, there's no difference. But the practical reality is the Landmarks Preservation Commission is a city agency, and it's controlled by City Hall and the mayor, and so is the Parks Department. So, it's rare, exceedingly rare, for the Landmarks Preservation Commission to really hold the feet of another agency to the fire, as I think needs to be done here. And so that's why I think it's so important that this meeting is being held. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the Parks Department I believe, is not going to go through with an application to try to demolish this building if they're getting a clear message from the community board, from local elected officials, and from the community saying, we do not want to see this demolished. If they're not getting that message, even though technically they shouldn't be allowed to demolish it, my guess is they will be.
Yeah, that's why we really wanted to get ahead of it on this. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andrew. All right, Chanel, that concludes everybody, the public, the board members, the committee members. So back to you.
I feel like the pipsqueak that the lady spoke about. I seem to be the only living person who didn't grow up in the center. I had lots of woods and rocks and things to play on, but I was never there. Nevertheless, this is exactly what we talked about this meeting should be, that the members of the public are the stars, and we're here writing down what they said. I've never heard this kind of testimony in any meeting about anything for the community board before. It's like a revival meeting. And we've got plenty of revivalists here. Certainly we want to move along. And Andrew spoke a bit about why we're having it now and why we pushed, some say too early, with the resolution, because we want to take the lead, not follow along meekly or unmeekly once an application for demolition has come about. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to having my first visit to it when it's revived. Please remember that the portal for this meeting will be opened on the community board website for one more week. And if there is anybody who didn't testify in person, please send us written testimony so that we can have something from everybody who is here tonight and ask friends to do so as well. These comments are going to be compiled and will be a valuable part of the record and will be used in our ongoing mission.
Excuse me, I would just like to add to that, if anybody who did testify would like to follow up with hard copies of your testimony, please send those in as well. All right, back to you.
We'll need them for the movie script.
I love it. Take it away. What should the board
The report of this meeting and other documents will be on the Community Board 2 website landmarks page. We're going to have a dedicated block on that page with much of the material that you've seen already on the calendar page for this meeting. It will be transferred over and updates will be there. So just look at it from time to time and you'll keep informed. The letter from the commissioner that was read earlier this evening promised reports by the end of the year. This is not a meeting, but a community listening session. As not being an official meeting, no action can be taken. And however, of course, everything that was heard here is going to be considered. And there'll be a similar meeting at some time with the representative of the commission. And at that time, we will have much the same format and will have as little as possible from us and as much as possible again from you. I want to thank everyone with their consideration for the recent change of the meeting place and almost literally changing the presentation materials at the last minute. We appreciate everyone here and we'll look forward to keeping in touch with you. And someone spoke about, I think, an army of marchers, and I think we have the beginnings of our army of marchers here, and it will be organized into I'm sure, a group, and demonstrations are always effective. And I believe Andrew has a portable podium that can go all around the city. So we'll be on top of this throughout. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks to everyone who spoke and everyone who attended. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're out.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
That was
a lot.
tremendous. Thank you.